Hi everyone, TR here, and thanks for dropping by and watching my video. So today I want to do something different. So in this video, I want to talk about the best realistic CGI movies that I have seen so far. So this is something that's close to my heart because ever since Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy came out with those realistic CGI cutscenes in the games, I felt hooked that I want to see more of that and turn into actual movies. Now, it's sad to say that there are only quite a few movies like these. And I'm not talking about Pixar movies that are cartoonish types like Toy Story. We're looking into movies that are more on realistic looking. And you don't see much of that so far unless I have not, looked for them enough. But I think I've searched enough to say that there are only quite a few of them out there. So with that said, hope you enjoy the list and hope you enjoy the video, and let's get on to it. So the first movie that we're going to kick off in the list would be Final Fantasy. Now Final Fantasy was actually the first computer-generated animated motion picture with photorealistic characters. This was, in my opinion, the pinnacle of the potential of what CGI can do in terms of making a movie. And I was so hyped up to it when I watched it before. Unfortunately, the movie kind of sucked, to be honest. The realism, the CGI, it's beautiful. I have no comment on that. It was so beautiful at that period in time. But the story was so devastating for me because I was expecting to see something like Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII. You're fighting against Bahamut, you're trying to tame Eidolons and whatnot. But in this movie, you're hunting spirits with regular soldiers, and it was just boring, to be honest. They veered away too much from the Final Fantasy concept that we were kind of hoping to see, and they made it a bit way too realistic. And I'm not surprised that the movie, bombed in the box office. But if you haven't seen it, I do recommend you watch it because you'll see, how it was back then. And I have to say the animation from 2001 can still hold up until today, and I have to give them a two thumbs up for that one. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. If you haven't seen this movie, please watch this movie right after you watch this video. It's one of the best ones out there. So this is a direct sequel to Final Fantasy VII, and it has all of the characters show up in the movie, which was so great. And they have a lot of action sequences, which was fantastic, I have to say. And having to see Cloud doing his limit breaks was so beautiful to see. I think I've seen this movie so many times already. But the only downside that I saw in this particular movie is the story. Now, if you're not a follower of Final Fantasy VII, you wouldn't really understand what exactly is going on. Even for me, as a Final Fantasy VII fan, I really didn't understand the movie completely. I had to read Wikipedia, I had to read some fan forums just to understand what exactly is going on in this movie. Because partly for me, I didn't really understand where the enemy is coming from, what exactly is happening in the story. But the action, wow, I'm floored, I have to say. It was fantastic. It was everything I would have wanted to see in the first Final Fantasy movie that they created. So yeah, definitely a high recommendation for this movie. So if you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch it. The last movie in the Final Fantasy franchise so far is Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15, which was released in 2016. Now, the timeline for this movie was set in parallel with the timeline of the actual Final Fantasy 15 game. So this story was happening while you are actually, playing the game in Final Fantasy 15. Now, this revolves around an elite team called the Kingsglaive that's protecting the Kingdom of Lucis against the army from Niflheim and their demons. Now, I have to say, in terms of story, this is, I think, the most cohesive story that I've watched so far if I'm gonna compare it with Advent Children and Spirits Within. It made sense and the action made sense. And when I watched the movie, I didn't feel absolutely lost because personally I haven't played Final Fantasy 15. So it did make sense and I pretty much enjoyed it, and the CGI was Raise the Roof. It was pretty good. It was 2 thumbs up with 3 thumbs up and a 4 thumbs up for me. The next movie I'm gonna recommend would be Appleseed Alpha. Now, personally, I haven't seen actually the previous Appleseed series, so I'm not very familiar with the backstory of this. But as far as I know, this particular movie is not part of the canon of what Appleseed was. So this is something more of a deviation from the actual storyline from Appleseed series. So this is more or less we can classify as a standalone movie. Now, I have to say this movie is reminiscent for me for Ghost in the Shell. It reminds me so much of what Ghost in the Shell can be if they actually created an actual CGI movie instead of the one that they did with Scarlett Johansson. I read a lot of bad reviews from it. I haven't seen it myself, so I'm crossing my fingers. I'm hoping it's not that bad. But if you're a fan of Ghost in the Shell, then definitely you'll enjoy this one. This is more of cyborg military robots, whatnot. It's really nice to watch. The CGI animation was pretty good. So yeah, go ahead and watch it. The Resident Evil series. So Resident Evil series didn't really expect them to actually produce CGI movies, but I have to thank Capcom for actually doing this and hope they do continue it up until the end of time. In terms of quality of animation, they've gotten better and better, but of course, story-wise, they still need a lot of work to make a very good story for Resident Evil. Even from Degeneration to Damnation to Vendetta, the story is not really that good, to be honest, but the CGI is getting better, I have to say. The action sequences are pretty good, but overall, in my opinion, Damnation has the best action sequences mainly because I get to see giant nemesis going on about, and I get to see them mind controlling lickers and having them fight against giant nemesis. I'm like, all right, sign me up. I want that movie. I want to see that. It was so much fun. But of course, if we're looking into story, not really. None of the three actually shine in terms of story, especially the latest one. I felt that the villain there was so weak that I wish that they just thought of something else, or maybe they just bring back Wesker and have them fight again. But of course, definitely, if you're a fan of zombies, survival horror, then definitely this is the thing for you. Resident Evil series. So this is a series that I wish that Capcom will never stop making. They're not the best CGI movies out there in terms of story, but they're very entertaining. You get to see zombies, you get to see lickers, you get to see nemesis, you get to see mutated zombies and whatnot, and it's so fun to watch that they're very entertaining for me in terms of action sequences and whatnot. Now, the story, they really need to work on with the stories for these movies because they tend to get a bit bland or get a bit boring, or the villains are not really that interesting to see. Especially you, Vendetta, your villain kind of sucked. But the action sequences from Leon and Chris were pretty darn good, so I have to give them a thumbs up for that one. So again, if you're a fan of zombies, mutated monsters, and whatnot, go ahead and watch it. If you do notice, Leon is in it for all three of the movies. I have to say Leon is invincible. He will never die. He already faced a giant nemesis and lived to tell the story about it. You know, what more can you expect from Leon? Space Pirate Captain Harlock. There's not much to say for me in this particular movie. It was released way back in 2013, but I have not heard of it up until last year when I was trying to look for some CGI movies that I wanted to watch. And I have to say it was done pretty well. The action sequences were pretty good in terms of space battles. Seeing Arcadia fight off an armada of spaceships was beautiful. It was so good. So I give them 5 thumbs up for doing that. But overall, it was an okay movie. If you're a fan of Captain Harlock, then I'm pretty sure you've already seen it. But if not, then yeah, sure, why not? Go and watch this movie. It's not bad. Gantz Zero. What else can I say about this movie? It's so good. I would wish that they will create something more of this. Now, if you were a big fan of Ganson, I would assume you've seen it. But if not, I would recommend that you read the Gantz series in manga. Don't watch the anime because the anime is kind of kind of crappy, to be honest. They veered away from the storyline in the manga, and I really didn't enjoy what they did with it afterwards. It was a mess, to be honest. It became cringy, creepy for me. But for this specific movie, it's fantastic. It's beautiful. Starship Troopers Invasion. So this movie is actually something that I did not expect to see in the list because I didn't know that they had a CGI movie way back into 2012. And it's still the same premise. They're still fighting the bugs. So they're kind of like the Terrans fighting against Zergs. So this movie is based off on the original movie, which is Starship Troopers, way back in 1997. And the characters from this original movie is still in this CGI animation movie. The funny thing here is that when I watch the movie, General Rico never ceases to remind me of Big Boss. He looks so much like Solid Snake. If you watch the movie, you'll laugh your ass off when you look at him because you'll never stop thinking about Solid Snake with this particular animation. Maybe the people were heavily inspired by Metal Gear in this movie. I do recommend you also watch the original movie. It's still fun to watch. Even up until today, I would say it's still a pretty darn fun popcorn movie. And last but not the least, Adventures of Tintin. Now, unfortunately, the movie didn't really make money. It wasn't received well. Pretty much a fun movie. It's not the best movie, yes, I mean, but if you're a fan of Tintin, then it's a very good throwback movie for you. And personally, I have watched the Tintin animated series when I was a kid, and so having seen this movie come out in 2011, I just had to watch it, and I had a lot of fun. It's not the best story, of course, but if you were into detective mystery, kind of like Indiana Jones type of movie, then maybe Adventures of Tintin can make you quench that thirst for adventure. I've also made a special mentions list, so these movies I have not seen yet, but they are highly recommended by a lot of people, so that's why I'm putting them here. So that would be Planzet, Vexille, and Saint Seiya. For Vexille, I felt that Vexille is more leaning into cel shaded animation, so I don't know if this movie should be in this list, but that's okay. For Animatrix, the only main reason why I didn't include it in the main list is because the CGI photorealistic movie is only about maybe 10 minutes in the movie, then the rest of the movie is more or less anime style movie. So given the time, I'm going to try to watch these movies in the special mention list, and hopefully I do enjoy them. Now, if you do have some recommendations of CGI movies that I have not seen yet or not in this list, please do share them in the comments. I would really love to watch them. So thanks guys for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a like and subscribe. And if not, there's a dislike button there that you can press. And with that guys, hope to see you again in the next episodes. TR out.